right, guys, welcome back to Tactical Foul. We're here with our recruitment series. We have myself, Kyle Grew, Steve Ishard, and Steve Walker, both from Northwood University. And today we're going to be taking on the task of talking about juniors and seniors. Just so you guys have a little bit of clarity, when Stevie's talking, he's going to be talking about the juniors, and when Steve's talking, he's going to talk about the seniors. So let's get into it with the first question, all right? What is something that they need? What are the things that they need to start doing differently once they can have contact with their coaches?
So with juniors right now, after their sophomore year, June 15th is when an actual coach can have any discussion with any players. So the biggest thing is that if you have been as a sophomore and you've been consistently talking to a coach and you've kind of got an idea where you want to go, now is the time to clarify when you're emailing coaches, hey, I'm now just graduated my sophomore year. I'm going to be a senior. I'm very interested. From what we talked about last week, you should have been working on your highlight video to make it better, to be able to send to them now, because they can now they can respond and they can say, hey, we love your highlight video. So I think one of the biggest things is that they've got to now put forward that they are juniors and, hey, I'd like to call you. Can we have a conversation? I'm interested. Potentially set up a visit, because then the coach can go back and forth now and talk to them. Where before, if they set up a visit, it can't be they can't go back and forth. Like, the visit has to be through the school. They have to be on campus. So as a junior now, you can go meet them at a game and watch them and have a chat with them to see what they're looking at for the future. So I think the biggest thing is that the engagement with the coach as a junior is very, very important. Just like us right now, we're talking to a lot of juniors for the following year, because as soon as most of the time when your recruitment season is done, you start on your next year.
Yeah.
D1s be able to go earlier than D2, but I think the communication of how serious you are, because we get so many emails, and the only ones we really take serious is if they then come back to us and say, right, I'm a junior now, still dead serious, still interested, can I call you, whatever. So I think it's more important to emphasize now you're a junior, you're really, really serious about doing it, and not, throwing a blanket email out to 47 coaches and changing it like you specifically, yes, I'm interested in, like for us with business, they would be saying, hey, I'm interested in finance, or I'm interested in automotive marketing. So I think that is the big thing, is specifically getting down to what you're interested in and trying to get the communication to just be two-way.
For sure. And obviously, Steve, we're kind of talking, you're going to take the seniors, and obviously they had a whole year to start talking. Does it get a little bit more specific when they start talking, or is there a whole lot that changes?
I mean, obviously, taking into consideration, you would be looking at a player that has already, been through the process that Stevie just touched on as a junior. Sure. Is kind of already starting to make the lines of communication up with the coach. Usually around, that summer between junior, senior year and heading into their last year at high school is usually when you kind of solidify your choices. Mm-hmm. And it's actually all the way up to November is actually when you can actually officially sign.
Okay.
So November of your senior year is when you'll do your letter of intent, which obviously commits you to the school. So up until your senior year, you actually can't. You can verbally commit, but a verbal commitment again is usually, I think, in the college game, an unwritten commitment, if you will. Do you know what I mean? I think it's more of an old school commitment, but that can be broken. You know what I mean? You hear quite a lot of people making verbal commitments, and then a year down the line something else comes up and they take that off. So the senior year is really when they kind of solidify that. But then also as well, that's when you'll maybe see a little bit more of the increase from the player to the coach. Obviously knowing that they're committing to that program. Obviously communication lines get a little bit more with the coach. Obviously finding out what would be coming in from their summer workouts for their incoming stuff. So just kind of preparing them for what's coming next once they kind of commit. So senior year is a little bit more of a solidifying, if you will, of the work that you've done the 3 years previous, and kind of honing down those choices. And again, you can start signing in November. The longer you leave it, obviously, the less likely you are going to get what you want. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of schools, you know, like we've been pretty much done for the last probably 2 or 3 weeks now with our recruiting for 2020, you know, and they've started to look for 21s now. And I know of other schools that have actually started a little bit earlier than us. You know, maybe they weren't bringing in as many players, or you know, they just kind of obviously, you know, they had that kind of feeder system built in. So it's interesting how it kind of fits in, and obviously when you know can sign, and you can sign all the way up to. You know, I'm not saying that you won't have signed. I mean, like Stevie said, you know, we still get a ton of emails from players now, you know, that are seniors, and obviously this has impacted it, you know, drastically because, you know, those showcases in March and April have all been cancelled. You know, so those opportunities for those seniors kind of have diminished now to kind of get their foot in the door. So, you know, this situation that we find ourselves in, planning is even more important, you know, for those seniors that are there right now. So,
for sure. So the next question we have is, as coaches, what are you looking for in terms of the communication you're receiving from the players?
So when it comes to, when we're looking at juniors, communication's got to be a little bit more advanced. Like you're not talking to a 10-year-old. So you got to be able to, you know, like you're talking to an adult. They can hold a conversation. You know, the details of what they want to do and what they're looking at is like I just said before. It's very, very important when you're a college coach. It's very important as a player to understand that when you reach out to a coach and that coach responds, there's an engagement there. So it's important that how your persona is, how you're emailing to him, you know, what you emailing, is it slang, is it proper grammar, makes a big difference to a coach where, you know, you'll have some coaches who are all about the email and, you know, it's the email is broken down like it's a lawyer letter. And then you'll have kids saying, yo, coach, and it's like, well, that's probably not the way, you know, me and Steve would be okay with that. We'd find that quite funny. But there's some coaches who would be like, absolutely not. You can't even write a proper email. That's not happening. Yeah. So it's all about the level of the school, where you're at, what you're doing. Communication, I think, is very key. And I think it's very key that as a player, when you do get your junior year, your communication has to be more than just an email. It's got to be a text, got to be a phone call. Like when you're communicating back and forth, you know, perfect example, myself and Steve, we had 2 video calls with 2 juniors. Was it last week, Steve, it was?
Yeah, last Thursday.
Two players from from probably the top team in the state. Their 2 top players had contacted us because they were very interested in coming to Northwood. So straight away, when we got the email, it was hey, can you get a video call? You know, let me see you face to face. Let me see how you talk. You know, you get some kids who like get their phones and they're like, hey, coach, how are you? You know, and then you get some kids who are like zoomed in and they're like very, very focused on what you're saying. And so it's all about, you know, we've learned over the years that the way we go forward now is that as soon as we know somebody's interested and there's a genuine interest, especially in the times we're in, it's a video chat straight away. Let's have a look at them. Let's see what they look like. You know, one kid was very quiet and we had to drag questions out, and the other one like had a list. He just said, all right, I've asked you that, coach. Next question is this. And he had a list of 10 questions. So for me and Steve, it was like, oh, great. Like we can just bounce off. And the other one, it was like, well, do you have any more questions? I don't know, really. And it was like, well, you wanted the video chat, so what did you want to talk about? So it's very, very important that if you are going to communicate with a coach, because most of the time when you email, you're wanting a response. You're wanting a coach to email you back. So if he's going to email you back, you need to be prepared to have questions to ask him so he can answer them.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So I kind of assume that it kind of falls in line with the same, you know, the last question as well, where it's very similar, but there's maybe a bit of more urgency. Would you say that, you know, you're looking for more consistency even with conversations as well, maybe more communication as a senior?
Yeah, again, I mean, obviously, but, you know, at that point when you kind of, you know, the verbal side, you know, I mean, the 2 stages, obviously, before you've signed and once you've signed. I think once you've signed, obviously the communication, you know, should be frequent, you know, and obviously in years previously, you know, you would obviously get their, you know, the spring schedule, you would go and watch games, you'd go check them out as much as you possibly can. Now, things that we've been doing now is just getting on the Zoom calls with players, and kind of filling them in and keeping them up to date on what's going on. I think, kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Stevie said as far as the communication, I think another facet that I think sometimes players might not want to do is even if you're in a situation where, if I'm talking to you as a recruit and we've had quite a few conversations and we've talked about, various different aspects of what you're doing. If you decide it's not what you want to do, then pick up the phone and let me know. You know what I mean? Like we understand we're in the situation that we're not the right fit for everybody. But if we've been putting in obviously the time and effort, we've come to watch you play, we've put in the times with the calls, and we've kind of built that relationship. If you come to me and say, what, coach, it's just not the right fit for me, I've got to do another offer at this school, this is going to be a thing, I would be way more happy, because you never know what happens down the line where you might go to that school and it ends up falling apart. And guess what? We could be an option for you. But if you killed that with your communication, it just ends up stunting all your options. As an example, today I got a text message today from one of my old keepers from Nationals. Actually, she's on the transfer portal. She hasn't played for me for like 2 years, and she wants to know if the coach calls me, would I, be willing to kind of put forward a thing? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you were extremely good when I was a player for me, and I'll happily kind of, help you out from there. So it's kind of basically the same way, you know what I mean? And that can be either an email, again, professionally done. It can be a phone call, professionally done, but also as well, what I also think a lot of players need to be aware of is just, if we've had a player that treats us a certain way, we know all the other coaches around, the word will get out, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's a good player, but don't hear back from him. You know what I mean? Or he's not very professional in his communication. And that's a big, it's massively important. As a college coach, you're dealing with, 25, 30 players. You've got a player that can't communicate properly, then, you're going to have an issue with him further down the line. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it sounds like transparency, maturity, and just, consistency are the big things that I'm kind of taking away from in both grades. So that's great. That's good stuff, guys. I appreciate that. The next portion I want to talk about is the commitment process. I want to hear from like both sides of the coin, kind of. So what goes into the commitment process from both a player and a coach's side? Either one of you can take it.
I'll do it. So
I know.
On a player side, commitment process is it's short, but it's not, which sounds very stupid. But so once you figure out your school, once you figure out the play-in, player says yes or no. If they say yes for us, a commitment process is when they've agreed to come to the school and verbally commit. We have them post on Twitter and tagging us into it, saying that they verbally commit to, continue their education and their athletics at Northwood University.
Right.
Just so that it's more of it's out there now. So if I get a phone call from, let's say, Louis at Saginaw, and he's like, hey, I just seen this kid commit to you a week ago. He just called me and asked me if I could come for a visit. So it's one of the things I learned off a guy called Dan Tudor. He came into Northwood a few years ago. He's a big recruiter guy. Like, he helps people recruit like it's just his job. And his biggest thing is that you need to get it in verbal writing on a social media network, because nowadays social media is massive and everything's on social media. So that the biggest thing for him is that if they're on Twitter saying it out loud that they're committing, that means that if they ever come back to you and you've seen this, you can say, well, listen, you've been going elsewhere and you committed to us. So that's the first step, them committing. Then the process is very, then there's a signing day. So November, I think it's 11th or 14th. They can write, they can sign, commit, whether it's an NLI or it's just an official letter from the school. And then, so before that's easy. Afterwards is where all the work comes in.
Right.
And I'll let Steve continue after they've signed.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot has to go in. Obviously they have to the clearance through the NCAA. That's one process that obviously they have to try and get done. Obviously, they've got to get accepted into the school. That's another process. Then obviously they have their different test scores, whether it be the ACT, the SAT. With some of the internationals, they have the TOEFL exam, which is English as a second language. So that's another a kind of test that we kind of come across that that you don't really deal with elsewhere. And then it's just a case of figuring out from there. Once they've kind of got all those things submitted, then how it kind of works from their package standpoint, like what do they qualify for academically, and things like that. So, and one of the things that's obviously impacted, the situation that we find ourselves in is this year is probably the only year it's ever happened where the NCAA have actually scrapped needing the SAT to get into universities. So previously you'd have to take the SAT, and obviously with them all being cancelled, it was around March time.
Right.
Because actually right at the time of when it all was kind of started, I think it was March 12th was that weekend.
Yeah.
We had three guys who were actually supposed to sit, and two of them got cancelled, and two of them took it and one of them got cancelled. So it's so this year, so they just decided this year just to kind of throw it out. So that's kind of where it kind of differs, but it's a lot of things. The NCAA is a lot to do, from obviously your amateurism and obviously getting yourself eligible, and that's a little bit, I think, easier on for the domestic player than it is probably for the international player, just because of obviously the different leagues and stuff where people come from. But again, that's something that can obviously hold up, a lot of things, and that takes into consideration what classes you took and your core credits. If you took a certain amount of credits that are the right credits to get you eligible. So there's a lot of information once you hit a senior. Once you've committed, that's really kind of when the meat and potatoes, if you will, of actually what you need to get done is actually start. So.
Yeah, the thing is, you just need to make sure you go back and look at all the information and know everything you need to do and be very prepared is, I think, probably the biggest thing. Stevie kind of touched on a little bit after the commitment. What do they need to do? I mean, you're committed. I mean, your job's done, right?
So on a coaching side, it starts. We'll put effort into kids. We'll go watch them, but then for us, it's more of a okay. We're going to go watch them more now to see how they play, because now we can vision them. We have our plan together now of here's a squad of X amount. Where are these kids going to fit? So once we've got them committed, they'll go onto our board, and then we'll go to games and watch them. And as we're sat there, we'll have notes of all our team. And we'll be taking notes of where we think they're going to fit in, can they play there and can they do this and that type of stuff, because it's after the fact you committed them, you've got to make sure you get to know the player really well.
Right.
So a lot of the times, we're looking at players, and we talked about it briefly last week, but persona of them, how they're playing. How do they take the criticism? So we can learn the player when they're on the field taking criticism from a coach. If they take it great, we know we can go at them. If they don't take it well, we'll take notes on, all right, so we can't really shout at him, so we've got to explain the situation to him. Him we can roast because he can take it. He might need a tissue or two, or, if we roast him. So that's after it, we do a lot of more in-depth search on the player itself, and for us, it's more of we've got to keep on top of him to get the test scores in, keep on top of him, because even though when they go to schools and schools contact them, the first thing players do is contact us and say, hey, this person contacted me. And we're like, okay, so what did she say? Well, I need to do this. Okay, then go do it. Like, I don't know what you're telling me for. Like, they're in charge.
I laugh because we've had that happen like 2 or 3 times already.
Like I've had I've had some players who have called me. It's like, hey, Stevie, such a body called me from Northwood. I'm like, okay, what did she say? She says, I need to do all this paperwork. I said, okay, what do you want me to do? Paperwork? Because apparently you needed to get in.
You need to get it done.
You need to get it done. So I think what happens is with the coaches, when they build that relationship, they become a safety net. So like, it is very, very like, we know, like when our lady at Northwood, KJ, when she comes to me and says, hey, we're contacting this player, me and Steve know that within 20 minutes of the player being contacted, we're getting a screenshot of what the text message says. And they're saying, what do I do? Well, ask the question, answer the question. So for us, we become that like bigger role. Like they come to us, how do we do this? So for us, it's more of we have a big checklist for every player. Every single player has all these checklists that we create. And as soon as we get their info, we tick it, right, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Because unfortunately, when there's a lot of parent involvement, it's not the right involvement.
Yeah.
It's not the educational side of, hey, this is how you do this, this is how you do this. The involvement's not the right involvement. It's just very, you just want to be nosy. Like, I don't want to say that aloud, but parents just want to be, all right, so how are you going to play next year? Where do you see my son? Where it should be, hey, the school gives you a checklist. So Northwood, on our side specifically, they send you a checklist. So you log online and your checklist is there that they need from you.
Right.
So it's just task orientated. But most of the time you get with these high school kids, most of them in a senior year don't really they take really bogus classes. So their final semester, after Christmas, if they go a 2-part or if they do a trimester, their final semester is really nothing. It's just to get them finished. So they lose their focus. When we get them before, they're very focused and this is what they've got to do. And then when they get to the final semester of the senior year, they lose focus because they're not having to be as organized and as structured and that type of stuff. So, for us, it becomes a lot more work for us, to be fair. If we want kids to get eligible, we have to be very, very busy.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it kind of sounds like the players have to do a lot of work prior. And then once that commitment hits, it's on you guys to make sure that everything goes to plan. And so, Steve, we talked a little bit about, the classes for seniors and different things. And obviously I made the joke about not having to do anything after you're committed. That's a joke, guys, so we're clear. Very much sarcasm. It gets even harder. Talk about a little bit what they need to do, on the field or maybe off the field, but as far as like the soccer, the fitness, and those type of things that they need to be, aware of going, in their senior year.
I mean, I think by the time they've got to their senior year, obviously, and if you've had that dialogue with them as a player, you hope that they have, at least by the spring of the senior year, they're committed. You've hoped they've been to at least a couple of seasons worth of your game. So they obviously kind of get to experience firsthand, obviously without actually playing in the games, what the college game is like. So you hope by that stage they're kind of preparing themselves. And I mean, obviously a lot of the stuff, when we had our recruit call, I think pretty much the very first when we asked them if you have any questions, the first question was, what's the fitness test? When we come into preseason, what's the fitness test? But they want to know, obviously, what the standards are, kind of coming into it. And one of the things that we obviously, we talk to our incoming recruits and we talk to obviously our existing players is, from our existing players, we're recruiting players. We're going to lose players, we're going to lose seniors. We're always obviously going to try and replace those seniors. But unless we're winning a national title, there's areas that we need to improve it. So these kids coming in are going to be hungry. They're going to want to come in and play. And, for the new recruits coming in, obviously we're putting a lot of time into you, whether it be, through film, whether it be live games, whether it be, when we travelled over to England at Christmas and going talking to players there. We signed a couple of players from the game that we went to watch. So the amount of time that you put into these recruits, you let them know that there's, that you're coming in with a purpose. We're not bringing you in just to kind of fill the roster out. You're coming in to kind of, put competition. So you want to try and create that competitive environment. And I mean, again, obviously, the situation we find ourselves in now makes it difficult, but just keeping in touch and watching as much as possible. I mean, the semi-professional teams that we kind of touched on, that are local, the Detroit Cities, the Michigan Stars, the Oakland Counties, the Bucks, those, that's a massive help for college coaches because you can get to go watch your players over the summer. You can see how your players are doing. They're getting to train regularly. They're training every day. They're playing. They're staying sharp. And you get to go watch them. You get to go check them out. So it's. I think that's really the main thing. Is obviously keeping regular on a ball. And like Stevie said, the ones that that are actively kind of participating in the communication, and then obviously reaching out to you again as as an individual. Hey coach, where do you possibly see me in the fall coming in? What do you think I could possibly do? What are the sort of things? What are the attributes you're looking for my position? Where do you see me kind of fit? So all those kinds of things that makes you think that the player is taking what they're coming into. They're preparing themselves for the season. They're not just coming in and being, all right, I was the best in high school. I was the one of my best club players. I'm just going to walk straight into this team, because those players usually don't succeed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these guys are the experts, but I mean, I was lucky enough to play in college, and I guess my mentality going in is like, I never thought I was going to be the worst, but I trained like I could be every day. Like
For sure.
I don't want to be, obviously, but you got to train like thinking, I might walk onto that field first day and I might be terrible compared to these guys. So if I'm not working like I'm the bottom guy during the summer or after I'm committed, I might end up being that way. So you just got to work your face off and, try to be the best that you can be at all times, no matter the situation.
I mean, another quick thing on that is, obviously, I think one thing to kind of look at for those incoming players from a freshman standpoint, look at the seniors at this standpoint. The majority of the seniors are not, this is going to be their last season of competitive soccer.
Yeah.
Their senior year of college is going to be their last majorly competitive season. And these are players that have been playing since 4 or 5 years of age. And all of a sudden the culmination of 16, 17 years of work is putting into this last season. I know our seniors for sure, our 2 senior captains, they're more than ready, and they're putting in all the work off the season because they know that this is their last chance to kind of do it. So they don't want anything to kind of disrupt that or jeopardize that, and that's kind of what they that's the competitive environment that the freshmen are kind of coming into. So
absolutely. No, that's good stuff. So the last part, obviously, as always, we're going to do this 3 things. You both will give your list, and today we're just going to do the 3 things or resources that can boost someone's recruitment. All right. We just heard from Steve for a little bit. So Stevie, why don't you go first?
So first thing, which especially when you're a junior, senior, is we mentioned as a freshman, as a sophomore, go to as many ID camps as you can to get the experience. First thing is narrow down the schools you want to go to and go to their ID camps. Make it worth your while now instead of you getting experience. When you're a junior, you should be at a point where there'll be multiple players who go, hey, I'll do anything, but at some point you've got to start narrowing down what you want to do, because I don't believe there's anybody in life who goes into the world of education and says, oh, I'll take that degree. Like, you've got to have an idea of where you want to go. Yeah. So the first thing is the ID camps. Make sure you narrow down the specific ID camps. And if you're going to pay money to go to them, go to ones where you want to go to.
Right, for sure.
That would be my first one. My second one for juniors is make sure you make an effort to go and watch the college you want to go to. Especially in the fall when you're only playing high school, you have the ability on a Friday and a Sunday where most schools play, or Thursday and Saturday. You should be going to watch the game of the school you're interested in, or watch them on TV or on the website. That is a very big thing for me, because there's many times that I've had conversations with players regarding one of the games, because they said they was at the game. So I'd be like, oh, what do you think? And like, what's your opinion? And I think it's important that they understand what we want as well, because if you are a very, very, very slow winger, but you're very, very technical, and the players that we currently have now are okay technically, but very, very quick, you are probably not going to fit into the style we want, because you're not the type of player we've recruited. So that's for you as a junior to realize, oh yeah, I think I could fit in there, and oh no, definitely can't fit in there because they want the 6'5" defender and I'm 5'2".
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So watching the teams to make sure that the fit of the style of play is important as well. And the last thing is, for me as a junior, I'll put it, is make sure that you consistently send the coaches the schedule of where they're playing, because we've had many juniors who get a schedule, and if the schedule changes, like we'll plan on going to a game, and then there's times I've showed up to a game and it's not the right team or the player because the schedule got changed. So it's important that if schedule changes, keep the schedule updated, because we're going to come and watch. If we're interested and we've had a phone call, we've had a video chat, and we've already been to a couple of games, we're going to come to keep watching you because we're interested. So we need to make sure that your schedule is up to date so we can make those, because we're not going to announce when we're coming to a travel game. We're just going to show up. Because if players know we're coming, they're going to say, hey, coach, Steve is coming today. Coach Shard from Northwood's coming. Can you give me a little bit more playing time? We don't want that. We want to know what they're actually like in their own environment.
Yeah.
In the environment that they are actually in, not a fake one. Right. So that's the third one.
Awesome, for sure. All right, Steve.
From a senior standpoint, I think my first one is obviously, now you're looking at, you're making your kind of your decisions. You know where you're going to be committing to. I think, obviously now what's important is looking, kind of beyond your high school kind of career. I think one of the first ones that's massively important is to get involved in, outside programs. I think that, that shows you as being, very marketable within schools. Programs. DECA is a very good one. Big brothers, big sisters. Anything that can obviously make you more marketable, because that's a lot of the times part of the college application. Is what you do. Obviously, additionally, anything outside programs that you're in. So I think that shows, and obviously, again, that shows you have decent time management, that you're able to obviously adjust and put time into outside things like that. I think obviously from a senior standpoint, your test scores, when you start to take those tests, the SAT test, the ACT, that we touched on, it's just making sure that you're prepared for them, and obviously getting the scores that you get. And we've had we've had scores from 700 overall to 1400. I mean, we had one kid that was a 1420, and it's out of 1600. So, the kid he did a pretty good job. He was in like the 98th percentile. So, and then I think, I tried to do this would be my top 5. This one would be my top 5, and that's your grades. I know coaches talk about it all the time, but your grades, your final GPAs and your final grades is absolutely massive, because as a school, obviously that dictates academically what you're going to get. So that straight away from a coach's standpoint, that's not going to cost me a great deal of money. An example I always use when I use this is, I use you and Stevie as an example. You and Stevie are both exactly the same player. You're exactly the same player, but you're a 4.0. You're a 4.0 student, and Stevie's a 2.0 student. So, which is a little bit more close to the mark. So.
That's realistic for sure. Yeah. Realistic for sure.
But you're not going to cost me very little money. You're going to qualify for the maximum amount of money. But also as well, what I think that also shows is if you're struggling with high school, college is not going to be any easier for you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes that's something that people don't look at when they look at. I think they just think that coaches look at grades as, well, it's going to save them academically. We do look at that, but also as well, we look at, if you can get over a 3 point or a 3.5 coming out of high school, you should, you'll struggle the first year in college, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be okay, because your learning style is where it needs to be. If you're coming out of high school, 2.2, 2.5, college is going to be a real struggle. And the difference is when college becomes a real struggle, you'll just end up dropping out. You can't drop out of high school. I mean, you can, but it's not obviously it's frowned upon, but you can drop out of college.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I think that's another massive part that people don't look at. When we talk about grades, and I think that's probably number one on any college coach's list, is your grades. I mean, that's pretty much, wouldn't you say so, Stevie? That's pretty much the first question 9 times out of 10 that we ask.
Yeah, if I get any recruits, the first thing I ask is, what's your GPA, what's your SAT? because then straight away I go to my chart and say, oh, you can get X amount of money. Oh, that's less money for me to try and give you. Or, if you're a 2.6 and a 700 and 740, I'm like, oh, you ain't getting any money. So I've either got to give you a ton of money, or we're going to try and ask you to come and walk on, and you've got to prove yourself in the school, in the classroom, before we offer you any money.
Yeah. So it's just it's just such an important kind of factor, because again, I mean, that's ultimately what you're there for. And another thing, once you kind of get into the program, your grades start to slip. You're not eligible.
Yeah.
And that's a slippery slope that you just don't ever want to get on, because if you're a scholarship player, it just causes you all sorts of trouble. So it's a massively important part of it.
Absolutely. For sure. So I just want to go back over these to make sure we can, everyone can know exactly what we're talking about. So we'll start with Stevie. We have ID camps, but not just ID camps. Make sure you go to the ones that actually are going to matter. Go to the schools that you've already narrowed down, you've done your research, and their potentials for you to go to. Go watch college games, the college that you want to go to. Again, you should be narrowing these down, have done some research. And I think from what you said, let the coach know that you're watching the game. And one question I thought of so I want to ask this, Stevie. Do you recommend that they take notes or just watch the game?
You know what? I think on a standpoint of, it will help you, because you're going to have to be able to understand the game when you get to college, because a lot of the stuff we do is we're asking players to be able to read games and read situations and read players and what they're doing, so we give a lot of footage to our players to watch of the other team. So it's important, even if they just take quick notes, because it's one of those where as a coach, you can ask a question, say, what do you think, if it was your position, what do you think, what could you change? And they could say, like, well, your right back didn't do this 3-4 times. So, maybe, it's just conversations you can have as a coach to a player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can go in depth with it. So, yeah, I think it should be, it'd be good learning from.
Good. And then the last one was obviously be consistent with sending the schedule. Whether you're at a tournament or you have, season games, whatever it is, if you send them one early on and that's the only schedule and something changes and they go to that game, as coaches, they're not going to be very happy. I promise you, especially if it's a little bit of a drive, then it's a real problem. So 3 good ones for sure. Steve, we have extracurriculars. Get in your extracurriculars. It's not only just good for a resume, but it also shows more than just like, hey, I can do extra stuff. It shows your time management, like Steve says. It just shows that you are well-rounded and can handle multiple things on your plate, which is ultimately what's going to happen when you get to college.
Can I add something to that, Carl, real quick on the extracurricular?
Absolutely.
Most schools, if you do extracurricular, will give you extra scholarship.
Yeah, you qualify for money.
You qualify for more money.
Hey,
just to throw that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. No one's turning down free money, so let's go. And then the next thing is your test scores. Whatever you think about tests, I think it just shows that you're able to prepare and you're taking your education serious. And then the next thing is wrapped into that, and that's grades. And obviously, we're talking about as a senior, you should be taking care of your grades before then. But this is about, I think it goes back to the previous statement that we were talking about, where don't blow off your senior year. Take everything serious. So, like, cool. Like, yeah, you want to get the GPA, but I think also, like, get an A in a real class. I'll be honest, I took 7 gym classes, but that didn't really help me any, and it didn't even count towards my GPA after a while because they went away. So it doesn't matter if you do that. But if you take a real class that's, applicable to college, it matters, and it shows a little bit more about you. So take care of that for sure, even as a senior. Even when you want to just blow it off, it's easy. This is a great talk. I hope everyone got a lot out of this. I appreciate you guys. And we'll be back for a next episode very soon. This is Tactical Foul. I'm Kyle Grew, Steve Walker, Stevie Shard, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.